Speaks, you will see him.
I'm here.
Secretary.
Good morning. It's great to be with you. Pleasure to join you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary, for joining us at the 6th annual 23rd Congressional District of New York Manufacturing Summit. And Mr. Secretary, who we have here today are some folks from our district across the state of New York and across the country to highlight the issues facing U.S. manufacturing. And you've been a great friend of U.S. manufacturing. You've been a great friend of our office, and I've so enjoyed working with you over the past few years. And I just wanted to first start by just taking a moment to recognize the news of the day and extend to you and to the entire Trump administration, to the president and to Melania, our thoughts and prayers, given the diagnosis being COVID-19 positive, that I know he's going to and she's going to get through this virus in a strong and sound fashion. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to offer your comments in regards to the president's news today.
Thank you. And I just also want to say that I am wishing both of them a speedy recovery. I was glad to hear this morning that they have that he has very light symptoms. And again, I'm wishing them both a very speedy recovery. And I'll be speaking to the president later today to update him on our COVID negotiations.
Well, I really appreciate that. So maybe if we can jump right into the conversation of the day on manufacturing. And you know, in the Problem Solvers Caucus, we've been working over the last 8 weeks, and I appreciate the relationship we've had with the White House and trying to get the negotiators back in the room. And I know you've done yeoman's work being in the room with the speaker, talking to Nancy Pelosi late into the evening last night, and even today is the news I've been hearing. So can you give your comments on why it's so important for us to get a COVID-19 stimulus package done, and what you see as the need out there for this from a manufacturing and just a general perspective?
Well, let me first thank you for the work that you've been doing. I know you've been speaking with Mark Meadows and others on a regular basis, so I appreciate that very much. We had another good unemployment number this morning. The fact that we now have unemployment below 8% is obviously a very good thing. I never thought a year ago I'd say I'm really proud of the fact that we have unemployment down below 8%, but I really am. That's a result of all the work the administration has done working with Congress and the legislation that we've passed before. So there's no question that had we not passed the legislation, we'd be in a very different situation today economically. I think the good news is there's many areas of the economy as it reopens that are recovering extremely well. On the other hand, there are still parts of the economy that are having a real difficulty, no fault of their own, but because of the COVID shutdown. Obviously, anything that's travel related, hospitality related, restaurants continue to have a difficult time. And as we look to do more legislation, really the focus is on kids and jobs and those areas that are hurt, and a much more targeted approach than last time.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Secretary. And I think one of the things that we were so proud of in Congress to get out there was the Paycheck Protection Program, and how much that went to small business in particular. And I was wondering if you could offer any comments on how you saw the Paycheck Protection Program being such a positive impact in regards to the COVID-19 height of the pandemic, and maybe going forward. Are there things that you're looking at that maybe we need to focus on in Congress to try to get this in a better position under the program?
Well, there's no question that it had an enormous impact on saving jobs and keeping particularly small businesses open. I think it was really life savings to many of them. I would just say we have an enormous amount of bipartisan support for that program, so we're very proud of how the Democrats and the Republicans work together. As part of additional legislation, I think we have enormous bipartisan support for more help to small businesses. Clearly, this time it would be more targeted. So in the case of the PPP, we would add a test of revenue decline to it to make sure that people who get second payments are the businesses that really need it that are still hurt.
That's great feedback. And I know there's a lot of businesses out here in our district that are in that exact position that benefited greatly from the Paycheck Protection Program, but just needed some additional assistance to get through. And then as they go also through the program and the loan forgiveness, I was wondering if maybe you could offer some commentary, the question of the loan forgiveness being a taxable event and taxable income, and how you see the loan forgiveness process going forward through the Treasury Department, and any advice you could offer folks that are going through that as we speak, that they can maybe get through it in a quicker, more efficient fashion.
So let me first comment on the tax issue, because I think there's a general misunderstanding, so that I want to just make sure that people understand this. There's no tax impact one way or another to the PPP program. So small businesses are neutral and indifferent. The way this works is that in the legislation, it was very clear that the money you get when the loan is forgiven is not a taxable event. So if you took $500,000 from the government and you use that to pay your employees, you don't get taxed on the $500,000, and you don't get to deduct the $500,000 for your employees because you didn't get taxed on the income. So you're completely indifferent one way or another. You're tax neutral. As it relates to the forgiveness part of this, I appreciate for many small businesses, the forgiveness program is a little bit complicated. As part of additional legislation, we do support the bipartisan fix to simplify the process for loans that are $150,000 and less, but still gives the SBA the ability to audit as necessary. Unfortunately, without legislation, there's only so much we can do. We're trying to work on a solution for loans that are $50,000 and less administratively that at least makes it slightly easier, and hopefully we'll roll that out within the next week. But I would encourage businesses that the portal is open, so I would encourage businesses to go ahead and apply for forgiveness so they can be processed.
I think that's great advice, Mr. Secretary. And as we talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, we hear a lot of it in the office and across the country. But there's maybe not as much attention to other programs that you see out there from the Treasury Department's point of view, or that you could highlight to these manufacturers and to other small businesses and larger businesses that may be tuning in today. Is there any other programs or assistance through the COVID-19 program or COVID-19 situation that you see as something that maybe people aren't taking advantage of, or is a resource or an opportunity out there that maybe you could highlight today so our folks gain some valuable input from this exchange?
Well, I think the good news, again, in the bipartisan legislation, and again, I think we're super proud of the fact that it passed 96-0 and 100-0 in the Senate. There really were all different parts of help for the economy. So there was money for hospitals, there was money for testing, there was money for development of vaccines. Clearly, the fact that we've been able to put into manufacturing a large number of vaccines so that as they come through the testing process and get certified, we'll be able to distribute them quickly to the American public. There was money for state and local governments to cover them for COVID-related issues. So firefighters, policemen, first responders could continue to get paid. So it was really very broad. And again, right now, the focus is really more targeted, particularly focused on schools. We'd like to pass additional money so that schools can have money, whether it's online or whether it's in person, that kids can be safe. Money from everything for child care to additional health issues, again, to additional money for the airlines, which are most impacted to small businesses.
I appreciate that. And then I also wanted to touch upon maybe some other areas that you've been involved with. I think that has been very helpful, especially the work you've done through Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve under the Main Street program, some of the opportunities there. Is there any additional resources that you see or changes from its inception that you see that could be utilized under that Main Street program, because of the liquidity issues are so important to so many of our businesses, especially our larger businesses across the country, that maybe you could offer some insight today as to maybe folks don't even know what that program is that are on this call?
Well, the good news is, the Federal Reserve team and the Treasury team worked very, very closely together. We authorized 13 different emergency facilities. The great news about that is many of these facilities, the mere announcement of the facilities, and the first two we announced actually before the legislation was even passed, served to unlock the markets and allowed literally trillions of dollars to be raised in the markets as opposed to having to put it on the government balance sheet. So whether it was the municipal market, whether it was the corporate bond market, the fact that you had a company like Boeing, who we thought we'd have to lend directly to, borrow over $25 billion, the airline industry borrowed over $75 billion, and lots of small businesses had access to their own bank financing once we unlock the market. The Main Street program is up and running. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit everybody. I think the issue is there are businesses that don't have revenues and really need grants and not loans. But again, I would encourage, I've spoken to a bunch of manufacturers that have taken advantage of it, and I would encourage you to make sure your bank is aware of it and discusses it with you.
I appreciate that. And maybe in another area, because it is all about cash flow. What I've talked to a lot of businesses and heard from a lot of constituent businesses and individuals, COVID-19 has impacted revenue so drastically for these folks and their cash flow and their balance sheets. And so as you've dealt with the authority that the administration has and that Treasury has in regards to adjusting deadlines and filing dates and things like that, any thoughts in regards to the utilization of that authority if necessary in regards to extending deadlines, extending dates, and how do how should folks look at that authority going forward?
Well, at this point, we don't plan on doing any more extensions this year. I think the extensions were very helpful to the taxpayers, particularly when in the beginning people were worried about whether they could get to their accountants, could get to their tax professionals, small businesses that were locked down. And I think that worked very well. We'll consider, I hope next year, by the time we get around to tax time, we have a vaccine and this is long behind us and we don't have to worry about these issues.
Well, I agree with you on that 100%. And I know, Mr. Secretary, we have a hard stop with you here in a couple of minutes. And as we wrap up here with our exchange, and obviously, we have news of the day and your negotiations on the stimulus continue with the Speaker. I was just wondering if you have any closing remarks to our folks and to the country in regards to those tuning in today that you would like to share with us.
I would just, say, again, we appreciate the work with Congress and the way they've worked with us. The president is determined to make sure everybody who lost their job as a result of COVID gets back to work. So our work is not done until we get the economy back to where it was. And we have a lot of confidence that will be the case. I think we'll have a very strong quarter as we reopen. But again, we're conscious to the fact of there are parts of the economy that need more help, and we'll continue to try to work to get that done, and we appreciate your support.
Well, Mr. Secretary, you have it. I've enjoyed our work together, especially through the Problem Solvers Caucus, and you've been up to the caucus numerous times, and David,
yes,
we've appreciated the way that you work, the way that your mind operates, and just know you have our tireless support as we go forward on the Hill here to make sure, as you're standing for Americans and especially American workers, I just want you to know it's appreciated. And on behalf of all the manufacturers of America, I really want you to know those are somebody that are near and dear to my heart. And getting them back to work and making it here to sell around the world is a mantra we believe in. So keep up the great work.
We do as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. All right. Well, Allison, I think we have an exciting panel coming up here.
We do.
And I apologize. Absolutely. I apologize to everyone out there in regards to the time constraints the Secretary was under, but I appreciate Stephen spending, the Secretary spending time with us this morning, given the nature of the headlines and the pressure that he is obviously under, giving the news of the day on the President and the First Lady's COVID-19 positive results. But so why don't we move into the next panel? You're going to do the introductions, and I look forward to the exchange.
Absolutely. And just so everybody is aware, any questions you did send my way or to the group, I have collected. We do want to get you some answers to those as well, even though the secretary's time was a little bit limited this morning. So we will get you some information on your questions additionally. So we are going to switch over to our next panel now. We do have Jay Timmons, who's the president and CEO of NAM. I'm going to read a little bio here for you all. Jay Timmons is president and CEO of the National Association of Manufacturers and chairman of the board of the National Manufacturing Institute, the NAM's workforce and education partner. The NAM is the largest manufacturing association in the United States, representing small and large manufacturers in every industrial sector, and Jay is the leading advocate for nearly 13 million men and women who make things in America. With manufacturers facing an urgent need for talented and skilled workers, Jay is also a champion for connecting more Americans with rewarding careers in modern manufacturing. Prior to his appointment as NAM president and CEO in January of 2011, Jay's role at the organization included service as executive vice president and senior vice president of policy and government relations. His previous experience includes serving as the chief of staff to Congressman, Governor, and Senator George Allen from Virginia, executive director of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. And when he first came to Washington in the 1980s, he served as press secretary for Congressman Jim Martin of North Carolina. Jay attended the Ohio State University. He and his husband, Rick, currently live in Virginia with their 3 children, Catherine, Ellie, and Jacob, and an assortment of rescue dogs and other critters. And I did have to greatly shorten Jay's resume. It is very extensive, and we're honored to have him with us today. I'm going to introduce the other 2 panelists before we jump in as well. We do have Steve Balger from the SBA. President Donald Trump appointed Steve Balger as the regional administrator for SBA Atlantic Region 2 in January of 2018. In addition to these duties, Balger was appointed acting regional administrator for the Mid-Atlantic Region 3 on September 1st, 2019. In addition to these responsibilities, he is responsible for a field staff of more than 100 loan, business, and community outreach specialists overseeing the delivery and management of the federal agency's small business programs, financial assistance, and business development initiatives throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. Headquartered near Philadelphia, the Mid-Atlantic region serves a population approaching 30 million through 7 district offices. Prior to accepting the president's appointment to SBA and the new Mid-Atlantic role, Balger served 6 years for Congressman Chris Gibson as district director. He has a 30-year private sector background, including having served with the Stryker Corporation overseeing sales and operations in upstate Western New England area. As a New York native, Balger is a graduate of Lafayette College and has held leadership positions in numerous nonprofit and local government organizations. And thank you, Steve, also for joining us this morning. We're excited to have him. We go back a long ways as well. And then from the NFIB, we have Holly Wade, who is the Director of Research and Policy Analysis. As the Director of Research and Policy Analysis for the National Federation of Independent Business, the nation's largest small business association, Holly Wade is called upon by national lawmakers and administration officials to give them the latest condition of the most important sectors of America's economy. The Main Street small business owners who employ half the nation's workers generate the majority of new jobs and give most Americans their first working start in life. Wade's opinions are highly valued in Washington, D.C., directing as she does 4 of the most important studies on small business in her role with the NFIB. She is involved with the Small Business Economic Trends Report, the Business Size Impact Module studies that forecast specific public policy proposals and their impact on small business output and employment, the National Small Business Poll Series, which currently includes over 70 publications, and the Quadrennial Small Business Problems and Priorities Report ranks 75 potential small business problems by level of importance. So we are very pleased to have Holly with us, and we have a great group of panelists here this morning. And I know Tom has some questions, and we're going to take questions from the audience as well. So I will let Tom dive in with these folks and grill their minds and get some information for us.
Well, thanks, Allison. This is unusual. Usually I'm the one who is getting asked all the question on these different forums. So I really appreciate that you doing the introductions, and to Steve and to Jay and to Holly, who I know each and every one of you. Thank you for taking your time and being with us on this manufacturing summit. And as you just saw, we had the Treasury Secretary here, and it was just so kind of him to continue with his commitment to be with us, given his obviously unusual day today, to say the least, with the president's news of the COVID-19 positive diagnosis. And I know he was just talking to world leaders as he was stepping in between events to be with us. But That being said, what we wanted to do with this panel, given each of your long, extensive backgrounds when it comes to U.S. manufacturing and to our local manufacturers, these three individuals in particular, I think have some very extensive history with U.S. manufacturing and having some information to share with us. And so, maybe we'll start with Jay from the National Association of Manufacturers. And I just wanted to maybe looking beyond this year, maybe looking beyond COVID and where we go. What do you see as policies and opportunities on the horizon as we emerge from COVID? Because I'm the eternal optimist, and I'm very confident we're going to get a vaccine and we're going to emerge from this situation. Where do you see over the horizon opportunities and policies that would best facilitate U.S. manufacturing? So maybe we'll go with Jay first and see what your thoughts are. So Jay, please.
Sure, and thank you very much, Congressman, for hosting this. For those of you who are on here, I want to wish you all a happy Manufacturing Day. Shortly before he announced his COVID positive diagnosis, the president signed the resolution declaring today Manufacturing Day in America. And we've been doing this every year, as many of you know, for several years. We've been hosting in-person events that have really inspired the next generation, we believe, showing hundreds of thousands of students and teachers what modern manufacturing is all about. This year, unfortunately, we have to do so virtually. It's the responsible thing to do. There really is no way to keep folks safe in a large gathering like that. So we've chosen to go virtual. We still have tons of events across the country, and we're hoping that lots of young people and their teachers will sign in to see that. So your direct question, Congressman, look, I think we have tremendous opportunities in manufacturing ahead, but let's not get, we also have to have a dose of realism, which, by the way, you're so famous for. Thank you. In case I forget to say it, thank you for your work in the Problem Solvers Caucus, because manufacturers have often said, we want to be part of the solution, regardless of what the challenge is. And we said that all year this year. And I think this year will define what manufacturing looks like in the near term after we come out of this. Look, we lost 1.3 million jobs because of the economic carnage that occurred because of COVID and the after effects. We've gotten back about half of those jobs, but it's still pretty dire out there in terms of employment, whether it's our sector or other sector. We know sectors, we know that. From a COVID standpoint, I do think it's important to talk about kind of how we come out of this. We've been saying right from the start, we all have to do our part, right? We all have to wear masks. We all have to be socially distant. We have to stay away from large gatherings. That's the only way we get our economy back. So I'm optimistic, Congressman, but I'm also wanting everybody to be realistic. We have got to get this virus under control, or the entire economy is going to suffer. We've been very fortunate, if you can call it that, in manufacturing. We were essential right from the start. We were producing the PPE. We were producing the medical supplies. We were ensuring that the food supply was not seriously disrupted. We did have some disruptions. We were a little bit more fortunate. Manufacturing workers were more fortunate than others in other sectors. If we're going to continue to build back, if we're going to continue to ensure that our economy continues to recover, we have to continue to be responsible. And I do believe, Congressman, that you're going to see a shift and a focus on more investment here in the United States, more job creation here in the United States. We already saw that. We saw that because of very competitive tax policy that was adopted in 2017. We need to protect that, regardless of who is elected in November. We were seeing more investment in job creation here in the United States because of regulatory certainty, rather than haphazard regulations that were slapped on manufacturers. By the way, that's not a political statement. That happened in administrations of both political parties. So we finally have that regulatory certainty. Now we're focused on workforce development because as bad as the economy is right now, manufacturers still have 400,000 open jobs in manufacturing, which is why Manufacturing Day is so important. That's why we want to make sure that young people know what great opportunities exist and how they can get the training to be a part of modern manufacturing. I'm very optimistic that we are going to see more investment and more job creation here for two reasons. One, the tax and regulatory policies that I mentioned previously that hopefully will continue. And two, we've seen what it's like when we don't have certainty regarding the supply chain. When I was going to Kuala Lumpur to find surgical gloves to be able to send to New York City and to Detroit during the most difficult times of the pandemic. Now, we don't really grow rubber trees here, so that's a whole nother issue. It makes it a little difficult for us to manufacture those products here at home. That's why, again, trading relationships are so important as well. We have to keep those lines of communication open, another priority for the NAM moving forward. So I too am optimistic, Congressman, but I also think for the next few months, we're going to have to be cautious and realistic so we can get out of this thing and start moving forward, because we were really churning very positively before this all hit, and we want to get back to that.
I appreciate that, Jay. A good dose of reality with a healthy dose of optimism is a good way to live, in my humble opinion. So well said. And so I wanted to maybe turn to Steve Bolger, who's also a good friend, who worked for a great former member of Congress, Chris Gibson, who I know very well, and I will be going virtually up to his new gig as Siena College as a guest of his on a panel myself. But Steve, in your role at the Small Business Administration, I was wondering if you could maybe help a lot of the businesses on this call, these manufacturers who are struggling with this application, this PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program forgiveness application. And we heard the Treasury Secretary. I asked a question about that to him, and he's heard from folks across the country as to the red tape and other issues that folks are dealing with in regards to that process, and how we in Congress, as we deal with this next stimulus package, one of the things we're trying to do is make that as simplified as possible for folks. But we want to also tell folks maybe there's some misinformation out there on the application, on the forgiveness side of this. What could you provide them today from your perspective at SBA? How best to go through that process, and what should they be doing proactively to get to a place of certainty when it comes to a forgiveness status on the Paycheck Protection Program? So Steve, maybe your thoughts there?
Absolutely. And Congressman, great to be with you and your team and all of our small businesses and manufacturers along the southern tier and elsewhere. So great job hosting this. Yes, just following up a little bit on what the Treasury Secretary said. SBA, we've received to date approximately 100,000 forgiveness applications. Now, there's over 5 million PPP loans out there. So we know this is going to surge. I think there's been a general wait and see attitude to this point as to where forgiveness is going and what's going to happen. Is Congress going to do something? Is there going to be new guidance from SBA and Treasury on that? So, but the bottom line is a lot of companies want to get that forgiveness going now. The lenders want to get that going now. And starting next week, we are going to be actually issuing our first forgiveness decisions for all those loans, and it's going to start moving very rapidly. So the best advice I can give right now is, first and foremost, work with your lender. Whoever you got the PPP loan from, make sure you're in touch with them. They're the ones who will be intaking your forgiveness application. And you can go to the SBA website as well, sba.gov. Under the coronavirus heading, there's a lot of information on PPP and forgiveness and how it's going to work. But most lenders have already set up their own portals, or they're working with other groups to offer assistance. So that's really number one is get with your lenders. Second, as you're going through the applications to fill it out, there's a lot of tools out there and calculators that can help you do that. Most small business manufacturers, they have an accounting relationship as opposed to the very smallest businesses that may not. So a lot of accountants as well are up on this. They've been preparing for this. They can assist you in filling out that application, whether it's the easy application or the standard application. I would think most manufacturers will probably go with the standard application. The easy application is more for sole proprietors and the very smallest businesses. One tool which I think is really helpful, and it's free, is from the American Institute of CPAs, and it's at aicpa.org. And they have something called the PPP forgiveness tool. It's basically a program that walks you through the process, helps you fill out the form, and when it's complete, it'll print out the forms. It can be uploaded along with the documentation you'll need to go right to your banks, to your lenders, and then the lender can send it in to SBA. So that's what we're encouraging small businesses to do. I wouldn't wait to see what's going to happen down the road. We don't know at this point. So a lot of, just so everybody understands the timelines here, a small business has up to 10 months from the end of the 24-week forgiveness period to submit their forgiveness application to the lender. The lender then has up to 60 days to go through that, make sure it's all complete, and then get that to SBA. SBA then has up to 90 days to process that application, agree or disagree on the forgiveness. Maybe you have to go back and get more information. But ultimately, we believe the overwhelming majority of these loans will be forgiven in whole, and that that will take that burden off any small businesses having to worry about it, and it gets the lenders their money back, which they want. So I kind of jumped through a lot of that, Congressman, but hopefully that provided a little bit of insight into PPP.
Well, I appreciate that, Steve. And it's always Tom, so I appreciate that. And maybe Allison, if we can make sure, I think one of those resources, the CPA resource, is very helpful. I've looked at that myself, and I found that to be a very good tool. So that's the AICPA. So maybe Allison, you could put that in the little chat box or whatever we call it here on Zoom. I forget which one's which, but make sure that people have access to that as a resource. And then the SBA resources are great and outstanding. But if they want a little bit more of those forms, I think that's a great tool. So maybe we'll move to Holly here. Holly, NFIB is just a great organization. I so appreciate the work that we do together, making sure that small businesses in particular have a loud voice here on Capitol Hill. And so what I wanted to do is maybe just open it up to you, Holly, as to what does NFIB have to offer to our businesses and to our folks on this call in particular that you see as the key resources that you can bring to this table for these folks to help get through this COVID-19 crisis in the best way possible. So Holly, welcome and thank you.
Great, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with everybody here today. Thank you, Congressman. And so just as a bit of an overview, NFIB represents 300,000 small business owners across the country. About 12 to 14% of our membership is in the manufacturing industry. And to your Congressman's question, NFIB has spent a lot of time and resources on webinars. So my colleague, Beth Melito, who's in our legal center, and myself have hosted almost, I believe, about 26 webinars since March, talking about COVID-19 related impacts to small businesses, the financial resources available, and then also some of the mandates and requirements that small business owners, especially employers, have to follow. But the webinars have been mostly related to the Paychex Protection Program, making sure that small business owners at the beginning knew about the program, were able to navigate the application process in accessing that important program that allowed for so many small business owners to receive financial assistance at the onset of the health crisis. And we know from almost 12 surveys now that are COVID-19 related how important the PPP program was for getting small business owners that financial relief to get through those initial months of the health crisis. And many still continuing. Most have exhausted their loan proceeds by now, but there are still a few that have money in the bank and are still using it to support business activity. The last few webinars that we've done, they're Wednesday webinars, they're on our website, and the most recent on Wednesday was a 90-minute webinar where Beth and I went through the entire application, the forgiveness application, and to make sure that small business owners, we had roughly 6,000 register for the webinar. Again, it's archived online, so you're welcome to look at it and see if it's of value to you in helping you become more aware and comfortable with the process of the loan forgiveness application. But we did go through the easy form step by step on who's eligible to fill out that easy form, and also the longer form or the standard form, as Steve mentioned earlier. And many of you might be filling out that standard form. That's a bit more complicated with the Schedule A and Schedule A worksheet, but we do go through that form to highlight how you would go about filling that out. So as important, certainly, as the loan itself is the forgiveness element to it. When we've surveyed our members, that was obviously the most attractive and of most interest to them, was the forgiveness element of the program. And so we want to make sure that borrowers have the most information and are as comfortable as possible with that application form, because it is certainly stressful. Business owners are not interested in incurring more debt than necessary. And so they want to make sure that their full loan, if not their full loan, most of their loan is at the end of the day forgiven. Some of the challenges that they're facing right now is that their lenders have not opened portals yet to accept forgiveness applications. And so a lot of small business owners that participated in PPP are still waiting to receive information from their lender about how to submit those applications to get those loans approved for forgiveness, and making sure that they get most of their loan forgiven. So still a bit of stress in navigating that process. As lenders start opening up those portals, we'll start to see then what the average time frame looks like as far as the process to hear about ultimate forgiveness at the end. We will continue to host webinars every Wednesday, or sorry, we've switched to every other Wednesday. So the next one will be in 2 weeks, and we will continue to cover the PPP loan forgiveness process, any updates, any congressional updates that may have occurred. We will certainly highlight those. And then most of the webinar is answering registrants' questions about their particular challenges or stresses related to the forgiveness process. So we do cover a lot of registered questions. Beth and I have answered thousands of questions of small business owners over the last few months about the forgiveness process, because that is such a challenge, a bit stressful, and so important for the finances of these small business owners who are still trying to navigate and finding the current economic conditions a challenge going forward, even though many of them those economic conditions have improved, thankfully, but this is a very important step in the process. So thank you so much for allowing me to talk about the small business sector through our webinars and our COVID surveys. And our next COVID survey will be released hopefully on Monday, so stay tuned.
Well, thank you, Holly. And Allison, let's follow up on that, because we've also received a lot of questions about that application and a lot of anxiety about the application for forgiveness. And so the NFIB webinar that folks can go through and look at, that's excellent to hear that that's available to folks out there. It's archived on your website at NFIB, and we'll put that up there hopefully in the box and send information to everybody here, because I think it's worthwhile to, if you have to go through that education process of knowing what that application looks like. And as you heard from the Treasury Secretary, and as you heard from other folks, the intent here is to get essentially most, if not all of these applications converted over to forgiveness, so that we don't want to put a burden, we don't want to put additional debt onto businesses during this crisis. We want to get to that forgiveness status because that is the best position we see from a congressional policymaker's point of view, speaking with many members of Congress. We want to get folks through this crisis and come out on the other side in a position to take it, to seize the opportunity to grow and to prosper and start moving in the right direction once again, rather than be saddled with additional debt. So I really do appreciate that. And maybe we'll go back to Jay in regards to some questions that we were getting from our businesses, both large and small in the district. We've had a lot of conversation during COVID-19 on supply chains and how supply chains are going to be impacted from COVID-19, how they have been impacted from COVID-19. And there's been a lot of disruption in supply chains. And you talked about the rubber supply for plastic gloves. And that's a great example of having this relationship with other countries, other areas, but recognizing that with supply chains, we better have redundancy plans. We better have the ability to adapt and to be nimble when it comes to these supply chains going forward. I think that's one of the lessons of COVID-19 as a policymaker I've learned, and many of my colleagues have learned. So could you offer any insight to our businesses on this call, large and small, as to what to do in regards to their supply chain management? And are there things they can do to mitigate the risk of supply chain disruption? Are there opportunities that you see from the National Association of Manufacturers that could be out there? There's the bells, they're calling us to vote here shortly. So just disregard that. I'm staying with you rather than go do that. But that you see from a supply chain point of view, that could be opportunities for our businesses of the Southern Tier and Western New York.
Sure, I'll go back. Thank you, Congressman. I'll go back to my previous points about competitive tax and regulatory policy. Look, policy matters, right? And I think we saw that spectacularly over the course of the last few years. As we saw more investment in the United States, we saw more supply chains moving here to the United States, or I wouldn't say move. I try to stay away from, quote, bringing manufacturing back to America, that phrase. What I want to see is I want to see the next dollar invested here in the United States, because we have to be realistic. 95% of the customers reside outside of the United States. And it doesn't always make sense to manufacture every single part and component here, especially those things that have a tremendous cost for transport. So we have to be very careful. It's a balancing act. But I think what we had done for decades is we drove manufacturing away. We drove manufacturing investment away. I would disagree with some who say it was because of trade agreements. I don't necessarily think that's true, or certainly not the only reason. It was primarily because of our non-competitive tax policy. We had the highest rate in the industrialized world, and we brought that down to 21%. We would have liked to have seen it gone to 15%. We think that that's even more competitive. But those who are advocating raising the corporate tax rate, I think, mistake how people make business decisions. They make business decisions based on what is the most cost-effective place to do that work. Now, when we have measured in the past, Congressman, we've measured the cost of doing business here in the United States and compared it to our major trading partners, it was always tax and regulatory costs that were leading the list. We didn't even measure labor costs because we don't care. We like paying higher wages here in the United States, right? That's a mark of pride. So if we're going to do that, we need to bring down the other costs. So that's point number one. Point number two is a plan that we shared with the White House and the president during this crisis, when we needed to talk about bringing some supply chains back for PPE in particular. And that was our plan for reshoring, our Reshoring America plan, which called for additional incentives. If we really want businesses to invest those next dollars here, they're going to have continued incentives. There's no doubt about that. Third, I would say, and this probably is going to get some mixed reaction, but again, I want to be a realist. We use the Defense Production Act for helping us to retool some of our manufacturing facilities. And I think you used the term, I believe you used the term being agile and adaptive to crises and other economic situations. I'm really proud of what manufacturing has done over the course of the last 7 or 8 months to shift into a much more to shift into areas where they didn't even think that they would be operating. We were first out of the gate in January pleading with the American people to wear masks. And one of the reasons for that is we wanted to protect our workers. We knew they had to go to the plant. We knew that healthcare workers had to show up. So we wanted to protect them. And we continue to offer that as well. So that's process. But policy, when we talk about Defense Production Act, we were also advocating early on for that to be used as an incentive to help manufacturers retool their lines. Unfortunately, it was often used as a weapon, frankly. And so I think as you look, Congressman, as you and your colleagues look at how maybe we can refine the Defense Production Act in the future, let's make it something that can be readily used as an incentive for times of national crisis, or even as we retool the supply chain here in the United States. I think there's tremendous opportunities to do that. And the short answer, that was a long answer. The short answer to your question is, well, let's just start investing more in the United States. But in order to do that, we have to have the right policies, and we have to continue the right policies that you and your colleagues have implemented over the last few years.
I appreciate that very much. And now moving to Steve from the SBA, we talked a lot about the Paycheck Protection Program today. There's been a lot of attention to the economic injury disaster loans that a lot of folks on here know about. Those are the more traditional emergency assistance type of dollars that the SBA puts out there to help businesses through these natural disasters, which I do. COVID-19 is a virus. It's a natural disaster at its core. And so are there any other programs, Steve, that you want to make folks on the call aware of that maybe they're not aware of, or that didn't get as much attention during the COVID-19 situation that you wanted to put on folks' radar this morning? That would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. And thanks, Congressman, for bringing up the EIDL. I know many companies in your district took advantage of that. That's definitely a different program, as we all know, than PPP. That is a loan, more of a traditional business loan that does have to be repaid, but the terms are very lenient, 30 years, very low interest rates. The underwriting to get that loan is much less than a regular business loan. So that program is still open. It's can go up to $150,000 at the max. Now I know that you and your colleagues are looking at that as possibly putting some more appropriation into that fund to raise that cap. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen. but I know a lot of small manufacturers would benefit from that because several are still hurting from this. Their revenue is down, and that program could be something that could help. So stay tuned on that, I would just say to everybody. Beyond that, though, our traditional SBA programs are still out there. Our 7A loans, our 504 loans, micro loans, but particularly 7A and 504 for manufacturers. We have seen, especially over the last couple of months, as PPP has tailed off, as EIDL has done what it could do, we know that there is a need for more capital access to our small businesses. Now, what happened, just a little bit of history, what happened back in 08 and 09 was with the Recovery Act, Congress at the time made the traditional SBA programs a little more attractive, a higher guarantee to the lenders, less fees. I know that those discussions are going on okay, what do we do post PPP, post EIDL, setting us up for 2021. So we think there's going to be a lot of interest in those loans, and we look forward to offering those to everybody. We think the demand will be strong. So we would encourage working with your lenders. And one tool I also want to mention, which has really gained steam during the pandemic, is from SBA. We have what's known as the Lender Match Portal. So if you're a small business, you can go on our website, go to the Lender Match Portal, input your information. I'm a small manufacturer. I'm looking for a $100,000 loan. We wanted to buy equipment to do this, that, or the other thing. And here's my contact information. That portal then puts that out to thousands of SBA lenders that will then, who a lot of them look at it every day and they scan it and see, okay, are there any potential, is this a potential way I can generate loans for my bank or credit union? So we're seeing a lot of interest in that lender match to try and match up small businesses with SBA lenders. So those are the things we're focused on now. And we think it's only going to become more important next year as we move out of the stimulus and more into the longer term recovery phase.
Well said, Steve, and what a great resource that Lender Match program is. So again, highlighting what the SBA is here. There's a tremendous amount of resources, and one of the things we find is a lot of times folks aren't aware of those resources. So one of the main reasons we've been doing this manufacturing summit is to connect people with the resources, make sure they're aware of the resources that are out there at the federal government, state government, local government, and that is one of the examples I think is underutilized to a great deal. So I appreciate that very much. And I know I have votes. Oh, sorry. I'm running out of batteries too, but I have votes that have been called. So I'm gonna ask my last question of the panel here today of Holly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Allison to provide some questions from the audience, from the participants, to all of you folks. But I just want to say thank you to each and every one of the panelists. I know you guys have very busy schedules, and I really appreciate you taking time to participate with us here. But let's close with Holly. Given NFIB's great long history of advocacy on behalf of small businesses across America, how best can small businesses, small manufacturers, large manufacturers, what have you, what's the best way to have their voices heard on Capitol Hill? And with that, I'll turn it to Holly and just close by saying thank you very much for participating as I go to the floor to vote here in the Capitol. And to all the manufacturers and constituents out there, know we are here 24/7 for you. Whatever we can do to help, we want you to know. We're going to get through this COVID-19 crisis together. We're going to come out of it on the other end stronger, wiser, and more committed to making sure that you have opportunities that are greater and better days of tomorrow ahead. So, Holly, what's the best ways to raise the voice for businesses across this area?
Certainly. Thank you again for inviting me to the panel. And one of the best direct ways that small business owners can have their voice heard is to have direct communications with their lawmakers and talk to their lawmakers, their elected officials, about the challenges that face them on a day-to-day basis. Talk to them about what would be helpful in operating your business going forward. And then also, think through whether it would be beneficial to join an association like the NFIB or industry association such as NAM. All these industry and business associations are there to work on your behalf to advocate for your specific challenges in operating your business and making sure that your collective voices are heard through these associations, but also with NFIB, with NAM, with other associations. The education component and the valuable tools and tips that we provide also for some of these programs that are challenging to navigate, such as the Paycheck Protection Program, hugely beneficial, but a bit challenging to say the least on some of the provisions. And then also information related to, the economic injury disaster loan through the SBA, which has been hugely helpful again. The terms and conditions are very favorable for small business owners. The application process is straightforward. And NFIB is providing webinars on that program as well. And so those are archived on our website, answering questions related to the EIDL loan program also. But going into the health crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic, small business owners were on strong foundation, strong footing going into this. And there is no reason why small businesses and manufacturing shouldn't be on strong foundation after the pandemic. The Tax Cut and Jobs Act was hugely helpful, a great step in lowering the tax burdens of many small businesses and manufacturers. And then the regulatory policy on a federal level and reducing those costs and paperwork burden have been hugely helpful also. So continuing those are steps that Congress and the administration can take to continue to support the small business sector. And our small business problems and priority surveys that we released a few months ago highlights that, in that business owners, manufacturers, small business owners in every industry, the challenges are often, local, state, and federal regulatory burden and paperwork issues, state and federal tax issues, tax complexity, all of those are challenges for small business owners. And so taking steps to alleviate some of those will go a long way in making sure that we have a strong foundation going forward to allow small business owners to prosper after we get a handle on the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is of utmost importance. And the business associations, trade associations are there to help support that. But then also directly communicating with your elected officials is vitally important.
So if I could jump in really quickly, Allison, I've unfortunately got to jump off. I mentioned earlier it was Manufacturing Day, and I've got to get on some live TV interviews. But let me just say, I wanted to answer that question. And Holly, thank you very much for great points on that. At the NAM, after we were able to see that competitive tax and regulatory policy enacted, we said, you know what, it's not enough just to talk about the need for these things. We actually now have to prove it. We have to actually be held accountable. So we started something called the Keeping Our Promises campaign. And we've collected stories from manufacturers that have detailed how they've used those great policies that were enacted to invest more in America, to hire more American workers, and to raise wages and benefits here in the United States. We need to collect more of those stories, just like Holly said. So get them to NFIB, get them to us, because we want to share those stories with policymakers And quite frankly, after the election, regardless of who occupies the White House or who controls Congress, we need to take those stories to those policymakers to say, look, this is what we achieved. And if you try to undo that, the counter narrative will occur. So higher taxes mean less investment. Uncertain regulations or more restrictive regulations mean less jobs in America, means less wages, less descending benefits. We don't want to see that. We want to invest and hire and reward our workers. And the only way we can do that is if we have partners with the federal government, which we do right now. And it's been great to see these policies finally enacted. So please get us your stories. Get those stories to Congressman Reed, because he's a leader for manufacturing in the House, and he can help tell those stories as well. Allison, I'm going to sign off by saying thank you so much. Thank everybody here for caring about the strength of our country and supporting manufacturing. We appreciate all you do for our industry, and we appreciate everything Congressman Reed does for our industry. Steve, thank you as well for helping to navigate some really troubled waters for our small and medium-sized manufacturers over the course of the last few months. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll sign off now, but thank
Okay.
you all so much.
Thank you very much, Jay. And we are coming to the end of our panel. I'm going to put Steve on the spot for one more question that came in from the audience. Since most of PPP loans are less than $200,000, why not just forgive them at that level without having to submit heavy paperwork and burdening businesses?
Yes, I would love, at SBA, we would love to be able to wave the magic wand and do that, because we know it would save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of man hours of work out there. However, that is, it has been looked at and by leaders in both Treasury, Office of Management and Budget, and SBA. And the decision to do that really has to come from Congress. Congress set up the program and set up the forgiveness parameters. If they want to change that now and offer some type of blanket forgiveness, which I know a lot of people are hoping for, then it's got to come from there, and obviously the president has to agree with that as well. So we're cautiously optimistic that something will be done at some point, but you don't know. So what we're saying is, get it ready, get everything ready, and once your lender does open their portal, get your application in and start the process, because it's, we can't count on any kind of blanket forgiveness out there. And in any event, you're going to have to submit some type of information on how the money was used, even in a blanket forgiveness scenario. If it does come about, you're not going to just be able to completely ignore it and walk away from it. So I would just say, be ready. And if we can assist, we're here to help do that. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Steve. And I just want to give a big thank you to Jay, obviously had to depart, Steve and Holly, for your expertise here. I know our constituents certainly appreciate it. And we do plan to send additional information, just so everybody's aware. This has been live streamed onto our YouTube page, so you can go back and watch it again. It will be there to share as well. So we plan to send around those links, and we'll also be sending around some of the links that our panelists have mentioned today. We think it's critically important that you all have those resources. And as you can see in the chat box, somebody from SBA has actually recommended, if you have any regulatory issues, to reach out directly to her, Christine Myers. And I'm sure a few of you probably have some regulatory issues from time to time. So again, I just want to thank you all for joining our 6th annual Manufacturing Summit. We certainly appreciate the revitalization of manufacturing here in the 23rd Congressional District and around the United States, and Tom will continue to support those initiatives moving forward. So we'll see y'all next year, but we'll be talking to you before then, I am sure. Have a great day and a fantastic weekend.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.
Weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.